What does true love look like when it's tested by chains? We've all heard the words. They are spoken at weddings, written on greeting cards. Love is patient. Love is kind. We're taught to think of love as soft, gentle, comfortable. But what if one of the most powerful examples of love in history isn't soft at all? What if it looks like righteous anger, fierce protection, unbreakable strength in the face of injustice? This is the story of what Black history teaches us about true love. A love tested by chains. A love that wasn't just about survival, but became a weapon of liberation. See, the misunderstanding of love. When we hear 1 Corinthians chapter 13, our mind almost always goes to romance. It's the soundtrack for the first dance in the wedding, the ideal read of a wedding altar. But we've reduced that passage to only represent romance and forgotten its original, radical meaning. Paul wasn't writing a wedding toast. He was writing to a divided community, a church full of ego, competition, spiritual arrogance. People were boasting about their gifts, ranking themselves above each other, forgetting why they came together even in the first place. So when Paul wrote, if I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. He wasn't talking about affection. He was saying that without active, foundational love, everything else was just merely noise. Yes, power without love is noise. Faith without love is noise. Talent without love is noise. Love wasn't sentimental. It was structure. It was survival. It was the glue holding broken people together. And right there, in the picture of a fractured community striving to be whole, we find one of the greatest love stories ever told, the story of Black America. Yes, to understand this love, you have to understand the test. Slavery and Jim Crow weren't just labor systems. They were systems designed to break the bonds. Families torn apart at auction blocks, mothers from their children, and husbands from their wives. Later, during segregation, success was punished. Communities were denied resources. This wasn't an accident. Oppression works best when it fractures the connections between people, because our humanity is forged in love. To dehumanize a people, you must first try to destroy their ability to love one another and even to be loved. So what does love is patient actually mean when you are in chains? What does love is kind mean in a world built on cruelty? Love transforms. It loses its softness. It becomes fierce. It becomes survival. Patience as endurance. Love is patience. See, we think patience means waiting politely. But in Black history, patience became endurance. Generations held onto freedom. They would never personally see a mother whose children who were sold and sold away, still praying for a future she would never even touch. That is not passive. That is resistance of the soul. When civil rights marchers endured dogs, fire, hoses, and jail cells, their calm was not weakness. It was discipline. The ability to absorb hatred without surrendering your dignity. That kind of patience isn't gentle. It's a fortress. Yes, what's in love is kind. Kindness under oppression was dangerous. Sharing food when you barely had enough for yourself. Teaching someone to read when it was illegal. Spirituals sung in the fields, sung with through their prayers. Coded maps and lifelines of hope. Kindness built hidden networks of survival, secret schools, mutual aid societies, churches that became sanctuaries. It wasn't convenient kindness, it was costly. Yes, it said your survival is tied to mine. Love does not envy, it does not boast, it is not arrogant. Slavery created hierarchies on purpose, field against the house, light against darkness. Division was strategic. Love became refusal to fracture, refusal to compete for crumbs. Love built institutions, it built churches, it built HBCUs, and leaders reminded the people this movement is not about one person, but it's about all of us. That required humility. This discipline became power. It is not easily angered. How can a people who endure injustice without anger? This doesn't mean the absence of anger, but it means discipline of anger. Nonviolent resistance was not weakness, it was controlled fire. Activists trained themselves to endure insults without retaliation, not because they weren't angry, no, but because they refused to let their hatred reshape their heart. That is a warrior's level of love, looking hatred dead in the eye and refusing to become it. Love never fails. That sounds poetic, yes, but in Black history, it was factual. Empires failed, segregation failed, white supremacy failed, morally and intellectually. But the love that fueled resistance endured. See Harriet Tubman returning again and again. The civil rights movement continuing after assassinations even. Congregations rebuilding after their churches had been burned. Love refused to let hate have the final word. Love never fails, not as sentiment, but as force. Think of this Ruby Jones. If you want to see the love embodied, picture a 6-year-old girl, Ruby Bridges, walking into an all-white school through a screaming mob day after day. A child. Yes, and as she walked, her lips moved. She wasn't arguing, she was praying. Please, God, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. A 6-year-old meeting hatred with grace. That is 1 Corinthians chapter 13. In motion. Remember, history confronts us because there had been a failure to love as scripture defines it. Healing becomes the truth. Telling the full story of slavery, lynching, redlining, mass incarcerations. Truth led to transformation. Transformation leads to remembering. If injustice dismembered was in communities, then love remembers them, putting the body back together. Conclusion, because Black history is one of the greatest testaments to the true nature of love. It's not passive. It's not sentimental. It's revolutionary. It is the dignity of an enslaved mother to the sacrifice of freedom fighters, the discipline of protesters, the grace of a child praying for her enemies. Love is forged in chains. It's tempered in fire. Patience, but patience that endureth. Kindness that is sacrificial, not easily angered, because it has disciplined its anger into liberation, and it never fails. This isn't just Black history, this is a blueprint. Yes, a blueprint for our lives. So the question is simple. Is our love comfortable? Or is it strong enough to withstand the fire of time and to change the world that we live in? So till next time, think on that, what's in family. Think on that, friends. And I'll see you again next Monday at 6 p.m. And God bless.